Hi, and welcome back to our study of ABCs of a Godly Heart by Cassandra Martin. This week we're going to be looking at the letter T. Today we're going to be talking about teacher. Teacher is a noun. It's defined as one who instructs, trains, educates, or guides. Our key verse for teacher is Luke 6:40, which says, "A student is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher."
So who was your favorite teacher? I know you have one. I think back through my school years, and there's several people that instantly come to mind. Miss Ferguson in kindergarten, Miss Gomert in second grade, and Miss Laughlin in high school, and of course my choir directors. Those are people who molded me and shaped me and made me want to become a teacher. So then when I went off to college, there were so many professors who deeply impacted my life. Dr. Watson and Dr. Pryor, and these people made such an impact on who I am and who I have become today. Teachers pour their souls into their students. That's why we get into being teachers, is because we love our students and we want to help them become all that they can be. The job of a teacher is to give their students confidence, to give them courage, to help them seek new challenges and to conquer obstacles. They shape us, they mold us, they give 100% of themselves to make us into a better person. Teachers see learning as a lifelong adventure. It's not a quick thing. Learning never ends. Teachers are transformers. Yes, they give us facts and data and information, but more importantly, they open our eyes as to how to process things. They open our hearts to how to be a better person. And our ultimate teacher is God. He shares his wisdom with us. He transforms us into the people that he created us to be. Kristy's going to read for us 1 Corinthians 1, verse 25, so we can see a little bit more about God and his wisdom.
"For the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than man's strength."
The wisdom of God is in every single piece of creation. As you look around at the world we have, from our human bodies to the water cycle and everything in between, it is perfect. It is filled with God's fingerprints. And God knows our hearts with this same intimacy. He knows the right paths, and his goal is to guide us to follow him and to bring glory in all we do. Proverbs 1, verse 7 tells us that fearing God is the beginning of knowledge. Learning to recognize his awesomeness is the first step in becoming wise like him. This fear opens our hearts to his holiness, and it speaks to his position as King and Lord. Fearing God allows us to bow before him in respect, in awe, and in wonder. In doing so, this positions our hearts as students to fully learn. So I want us to check out a very inspiring passage from Proverbs chapter 2 to give us insight into what we need to do to gain wisdom. So let's turn to Proverbs chapter 2, verses 1 through 6, which says, "My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding, and if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding."
So this proverb calls us to be invested in the learning process, and God happens to specialize in teaching wisdom. So let's break down this proverb. Verse 1 and Proverb 2 ask us to accept his words and store up his commands within us. God's words are true, and we can definitely count on that. There is, however, a difference between listening to his words and accepting his words. When we accept his words, they should penetrate our hearts and lives. We can even know and believe that his words are true, but we fail to apply them in our own lives. This acceptance and storing up of biblical truths are the beginning of transformation. Proverbs 7 tells us to bind them on our fingers and write them on the tablets of our hearts. It's important. It's so important that God has given us these images of permanency to show us that. Moving on to verse 2. If we want to learn from God, we need to turn our ears to wisdom and apply our hearts to understanding. So once we truly accept God's words, change happens in our lives as we apply that understanding of His commands. We turn away from the wisdom of the world that teaches us to look out for self, to press any advantage, and to rely on one's own strength. When we purposefully turn our ear to God and apply what He says, it trains our hearts to move with the cross rather than the world. Kim, could you read Ecclesiastes 5 verses 1 and 2 for us?
Of course. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go near to listen rather than to offer the sacrifice of fools who do not know that they do wrong. Do not be quick with your mouth. Do not be hasty in your heart to utter anything before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few.
So when I read that, it was kind of like eating a little piece of humble pie, right? In order to listen to God, we have to be quiet. His ways are above our ways, and He knows best, just like any parent knows best with their own child. Verse 3 in Proverb 2 tells us to call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding as we learn. Our teacher is so willing, but we need to ask for His wisdom by praying for it. Wisdom turns our eyes toward our teacher and acknowledges that He is the giver, and He will give wisdom generously to those who ask without reproach, according to James 1:5. Lastly, verse 4 in Proverb 2 tells us of gaining wisdom, to look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure. The world's wisdom resembles costume jewelry. It's fun, it's sparkly, it's big, but it doesn't have much value. God's wisdom is a hidden treasure. It's completely genuine, and it's a prize to be sought after and a jewel to be treasured.
Today, our psalm is Psalm chapter 25, verses 4 through 15. As you look through this passage, you'll see that David had a thirst for God that is unparalleled, and he allows that thirst for God to drive him straight into the presence of God. It reminds me of last week when we were talking about quenching our hunger with fast food service or with fine dining. God doesn't want to fill us like a fast food joint. He wants to give us the fine dining. And David knew that, and he went in for the fine dining. He went to the only true source of quenching, which is God. We need to know the heart of our teacher, God. So thinking back to those favorite teachers that we came to your mind at the beginning, what were some things that they did that you wanted to do? I know you can think of some. I wanted to be just like my teachers. I would line up all my little dolls. I had a podium that my grandpa built for me, and my third grade teacher even gave me an old teacher's edition book, and I would stand there and teach for hours and hours. I wanted to be just like my teacher. I wanted the pin necklace that like unscrewed to write with. I wanted to hold the book like just so. And that's how we need to be with God, our ultimate teacher. Our goal is to be just like him, to emulate the character that he has, the way that he focuses, the way that he loves, the way that he shows compassion. We need to emulate our teacher. And when we do that, his character becomes our character. As we read the Bible, his words become our words. As we have fellowship with our Christian brothers and sisters, we pick up on the love and encouragement from them and are able to give it back to them and to others, just like God gives of his love and his kindness. To know how to imitate him, we must walk in our ways and spend our days in his presence. We must submerge our hearts and our minds into his word and surround ourselves with those who are doing the same thing. God will teach us how to become holy. He will teach us how to follow his Son and how to walk in his light. He shows us his heart through his word and invites us to be just like him. Come back next time as we look at our response to God as our teacher, which is the word T, temple.